INEOS. Rodriguez ends up sliding down GC. He finishes in 7th, 12 seconds off Aronsman. Sivakov had to leave the race with COVID. They both did incredible time trials in Elche. Like, couldn't believe how well they did on the flat. And at the same time, Carapaz sort of stole the show in the third week, 3 stages plus KOM, but he's leaving to EF. So the question is for them, Benji. I mean, Rodriguez, obviously, he's like future GC leader. That's evident. I don't think him coming 7th versus 4th, like, doesn't matter relative to what I expect from him in the future. He just crashed badly. Sivakov is the question. Like, do you give him Giro leadership now with the Geoghegan Hart? Is he good enough for the Tour team? Like, how does the Vuelta change INEOS plans with their GC squad? It's September, and that means indoor season is here. Zwift have just announced a raft of updates with landing soon, so there's never been a better time to join or fire up the account. Again, if you pause your subscription over summer, there's more pace partners than ever, the ability to chase your PB Ghost across segments, a new race series, and even new roads, all landing soon. Plus, with Zwift Academy starting soon, there's never been a better time to give indoor training a shot. For more information, head to Zwift.com down below.
First of all, we also need to remind ourselves, next to Carapaz leaving, Bernal's trying to come back into GC mode. We have seen him be a domestique in Deutschland Tour, Denmark, and so forth. We don't know what it will give when it comes to GC next year. I'm considering him like a reserve for now in this discussion. I don't know what Bernal can do next year, so it's impossible to guess from my perspective. I think from your perspective as well, what he's going to offer in the GC squad of INEOS. I hope for Bernal and the team that he's able to rise up again and be the Bernal that he was before, but after an injury, you're never certain of that. We can just hope. But when it comes to the riders in this Vuelta, I think we can look at 4 riders here. Sivakov, Rodriguez, Hart, and also Plapp. When it comes to Plapp, I'll take him first, as in, I don't think he led up with the expectations that we perhaps put on him before the Vuelta, because he's still super young. He's got plenty of opportunities next season to still show himself in that sense. He just also was put into a domestique role very early on in this Grand Tour, and as a consequence was losing time already, although I don't think his climbing was on point in week 1 anyway to have been in GC regardless of that role in the team. So he wasn't the GC prospect in this Vuelta. Sivakov, he was not meant to be in this Vuelta, I'm pretty sure, until Burgos happened, and then he was suddenly co-leader of this Vuelta. So it's crazy how you can, so in a short term, go from not necessarily being in a Grand Tour to being the co-leader in that Grand Tour, and that, I think, shows how unsure INEOS was before this Vuelta of what their GC leaders in this Vuelta could offer. Now, I think Sivakov proved that he's a top 10 GC rider in this race and that he can fight for a top 5 in a Grand Tour, but that's a Vuelta and a Giro for me and not necessarily a Tour de France yet. That's how I see that, at least. His time trial was really good though, as in like much above what I expected his time trial to be. I know he was decent at time trial, not great, but this was an amazing time trial for Sivakov, especially on one that is that flat, and that goes the same for Carlos Rodriguez. And I think Sivakov, I'm mainly thinking about if he wants to do GC leadership, then I'm mainly looking at other Grand Tours, not the Tour yet. I think Carlos Rodriguez has proven more for the Tour de France, but again, the parkour matters. Or do you think that we've had Rodriguez also do a great TT, by the way? Do you think that the parkour matters between those two, or do you think that they're similar enough in the climbs that they need?
Neither are good enough right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think to contest for the TDF podium. Maybe that's unfair on Rodriguez, who's like, what is he, 21? So if he improves 0.05%, then he will be there. His TT, as you said, is good. His handling is good, generally speaking, too. If I was them, I would probably go... I'll go Rodriguez in the Bernal 2018 role in the Tour. I thought he was ready for that this year as a domestique, get the experience, kind of try and backdoor a top 10 GC like anyway, but primarily as a domestique. I would go Sivakov, Geoghegan Hart, Giro, and go Thomas, Tour de France leader again. Like Thomas is
Okay.
their best chance on a normal TDF parcours at getting on the podium. And I would also try and convince Pidcock to be a co-leader and really go for GC. Pidcock, I think, is above all of them in obviously potential. So I'd really just rinse and repeat, frankly. It's just
Yeah.
there's no Carapaz Benji, and there's no guarantee Bernal will be at Carapaz level, which was Giro favourite and came second. So I don't know. They got to be hoping one of like Rodriguez or Pidcock really step up fast next year, or they'll be going home again with no Grand Tour.
I think another aspect that we need to mention is we don't mention Adam Yates in this discussion. He has not confirmed to be at INEOS next year, and I feel like if I was INEOS, I would not extend him. He doesn't necessarily add too much when it comes to Grand Tour. Basis, are we wrong in that sense? Because if an Adam Yates is at this Vuelta, where do you see him land in GC?
Oh, it's impossible. That's it. Adam, no one knows. No one knows. I mean, he would have been with Remco on, or he would have dropped everyone and caught Carapaz on Sierra de la Pandera and then lost 10 minutes on Sierra Nevada the next day. It's impossible. Impossible. No, the likelihood is Simon Yates, I think, would have done better than Adam Yates, but he had to abandon with COVID. So I don't know. Yates looked really good at Montreal. It's a one-day race, and there's no news with him either. Maybe the market's a lot softer for him than he would have hoped, and also maybe Ineos are thinking Bernal's not ready to come back. I don't know. I don't really see the spot in the Tour de France squad for Yates, so it doesn't really make sense to re-sign him. In my opinion. There's also Danny Martinez, who we haven't mentioned at all.
Oh yeah.
He's struggled in Grand Tours. Well, no, that's not true. He came fifth in the Giro, but he's been better in 1 weeks. They'll also be hoping he progresses. So I would like to see them preference Martinez, Rodriguez, Pidcock, and G's already there. He just podiumed the tour by 6 minutes. What about Ethan Hayter? We may as well do the points discussion. I picked him for points jersey here. I thought he'd average second and third across all these sort of the LaGuardia stage or whatever. But he's just struggled with the positioning, and then did he have COVID or something? So should he just focus on trying to be a GC rider because his TT is already elite?
GC is it's difficult, because on one end I would have expected him to do really well in that time trial that he just DNF'd the DNS just before the time trial started, which really sucks. Like the timing of that COVID test was terrible for him. I think he would have podiumed that time trial. I still think so. Especially after we've seen Sivakov and Rodriguez both do well in that time trial, it kind of confirms to me that the INEOS setup is quite all right during that time trial. Their skin suit and their new TT bike and so forth. Now, I agree with your positioning issue. We've said it so much before in this podcast that he's got the issue that he's at the back of the peloton so much, and then he needs to be able to get to the front in time for the sprint to happen, which sometimes has not worked this year. I don't know specifically during the Vuelta stage, to be honest, but I do remember that there were moments where he was trying to move to the front, and then in the last sector, he was kind of like pushed behind and he couldn't get past anymore, and that's how he was unable to compete for certain stages. But I don't know. I expected better from him on the kind of stage like a LaGuardia, where Roglic ended up winning on stage 4. But again, positioning was the issue there, and